Hi, today we're going to be talking about emotional regulation. So, this is about mastering our emotions, being able to feel our emotions without being lost in them. And emotional regulation is a really important topic because we cannot master our life, we cannot manifest, we cannot have the most harmonious, satisfying relationships unless we're able to regulate our emotions. I'm Casey Lepper. I give you different videos, topics, and advice about your mind, body, and spirit that all allows you to create the life you want with the most amount of joy and peace. Let's get started. So, I just want to bring up this is a practice. Being able to emotionally regulate is a practice, and I'm going to share some tips and strategies on how you can really strengthen your ability to move through emotions. It really isn't about suppressing them or repressing them. Rather, it's being able to give space to feel them, experience them, be fully, and completely in alignment with them, and then grow the ability to truly let them go. This practice will help you move forward, being able to be less emotionally reactive and, as a result, more in tune with your soul and your higher mind. Let's start with understanding the power of emotional regulation. It's helpful to think about emotions like waves. They come and they go. And with the right tools, we can learn to surf those waves instead of being swept away. Emotional regulation really empowers you to respond versus react. And it's a key to navigating our challenges with more resiliency and ultimately more grace. As we strengthen our ability to respond, regardless of how volatile the waves become, we're able to stay centered and connected and peaceful. And to build this ability, we have to begin with awareness. Specifically, we need to recognize our emotional triggers, those little buttons that, when pushed, send us into a reactive state. Identifying these triggers really allows us to take a step back, to pause, and to respond from a place of understanding rather than instinct. It gives us space to choose a better response. I posted a video about the gifts of our triggers that dives a little deeper into identifying these. You can find them linked here, and that topic will really help you understand and work with the initial discomfort and pain that can come from being triggered. I definitely recommend watching it because it will give you a lot more context and information about how our emotional reactions can give us some information about what we need to heal or work on. When we have an internal conflict because of what someone says or does, we have the opportunity to look at it, to be curious with it, and to potentially shift it. If we do this work, we can walk around the world feeling way less triggered and way more peaceful. And that embodiment of peace is what people will be really pulled to. So, for the sake of this video, just take a little time to think about the things that trigger you and why. Why does it bother you? Is it connected to a past event, a belief system that you need to update, a fear? Being understanding and being curious as to why you're emotionally triggered helps you expand your awareness. So, as I'm walking through my life, usually things are pretty good. But if I have something that triggers me, and my ego can definitely come in, but if I'm building the curiosity and ask myself those questions, then I'm able to move through it in a different way. I'm able to just feel it. So I'm able to feel, I'm disappointed. I feel sad that I'm not feeling supported. Now I feel it. I let myself feel that wave come in, but because I've named it, it tames. So remember, it's not about suppressing, because really, I was a master at repression and suppression for a long time. It's about feeling it, being aware of it, but avoid letting the ego come in and take over the narrative. That's where drama comes in. And that's where we ultimately end up draining ourselves because we've allowed the ego to come in and make something that could have just been a small wave into a tidal wave. The long-term strategy of being more emotionally regulated is to heal, to meditate, and in my experience, to be able to connect spiritually. So to connect spiritually, it could be reading scripture, it could be diving into different esoteric concepts, maybe mindfulness, yoga, breath work. I do different rituals and study in an ancient lineage that allows me to really harness my energy as a spiritual being and being able to clear away some of the subconscious aspects that come in that feed my ego. So you have to find what works for you, but being able to connect to that spiritual space for me is like creating that pillar that allows me to anchor in the ocean. And so as challenges come up, and it's natural for challenge to come up, we need to grow. Instead of getting swept away, I'll meditate, I'll pray, I'll understand my higher mind. I'll look with curiosity about my ego and my subconscious. I'll do work to stay steady in that experience. And after 15 minutes, usually it goes away. So anything you do long term that's involving feeling more of a pillar, like a more anchored, more tethered to something that's grounded, a helpful metaphor can be that of a tree. So the more energy you put into a spiritual practice, it's like having a much bigger trunk. So think about a really, really old tree, maybe an oak tree. If the wind is blowing, is that tree going to move at all? No, it's going to be really, really steady, even in really, really gusty, high energetic winds versus a sapling. So with spiritual practice, it's building that trunk, it's enlarging it, and it's rooting it down. If you have like a little sapling and you're not putting any energy or work to it daily, it's going to be pushed around. It's almost like the sapling needs a little support system always to make it stand straight. So in my experience, this spiritual practice has allowed me to move through deeply uncomfortable things, to feel my emotions fully, but to not feel lost. I feel connected. I feel grounded. And so think about your own practice. Are you a sapling or are you a 1,000-year-old tree? So that's the long-term approach, but I do want to give you a short-term technique. This is called the 10-second pause. It's practical. All you do is when you feel your emotions rising, you take a deep breath and count to 10. Breath is so important, and it gives you a brief pause that allows your rational brain to catch up with your emotional brain. It's crazy how simple it is. People get annoyed when I say it because it's so simple. They feel like they want something more complicated. But truly, give yourself time. What happens is when we're too agitated, our blood doesn't go to our prefrontal cortex, which allows us to start to think about it in a higher form. Instead, most of the energy is going to our limbic brain, which is the mammalian brain. It's emotional, dysregulated anger. It's much more instinctual. And so say if we've been in a fight for a long time, we're no longer working from our prefrontal cortex. We're back in our limbic brain. And by breathing, it allows us to get our nervous system regulated to get back into our prefrontal cortex. So anyone who has been around a toddler knows how fast they can get into their limbic brain. They get very, very reactive. And that's okay. You allow them to move through their emotions fully, but then you help them get back. And that's what we have to do. We have to get into this mindset that we have the power to choose to respond better. And when you're breathing and when you're aware of this breath and you're present, a lot of times your nervous system can self-soothe. It can get back into that harmonious state, and you can look at what's just happened with more curiosity. And that's when you get into the question phase. You ask yourself, what is this connected to? What do I need to heal? What do I need to correct? What is this telling me? Emotions are there to tell us what we're experiencing. It gives us information. So no emotions are bad, even if you're experiencing grief or you're experiencing pain or sadness. Feel it, but don't be lost in it. I try to feel something really, really deeply for a few minutes. I'm always trying to push that ego away from taking the narrative and running with it. And then I seek to understand, is this something that I already worked through, that I just needed to experience to get more information? Or is this telling me about something I need to clear away in my subconscious or my ego? Emotions aren't bad, but they can be regulated and responded to or reacted. Now, when you're reacting to an emotion, that's where that limbic brain is coming in, that mammalian brain, and it's just snapping back. It's almost like that instinctual response. And when we're in that place, a lot of times we say things we don't mean, we hurt other people, maybe we hurt ourselves. So you want to be able to build that framework, that scaffolding that allows you to be in a much more responsive state, being curious. And I'll bring it in again because it's so important. If you are very emotionally sensitive and very empathetic, it's really easy to get into a place where you're just completely inundated with your emotions. Meditation can be such a helpful tool in this because it allows you to be in a centered space while you're experiencing this. So in a meditation, you can just quiet the mind for a few minutes and think about that metaphor of the tree. Think about energy coming into your trunk and building and expanding, and that you experience what it's like to be really rooted. You can build that regulation. You can build that ability to be really grounded in your emotions. There's some people who come in and they feel really, really proud of themselves that they don't get dysregulated. But you have to check yourself because it might be you're just suppressing and repressing them. I, for many years, was actually quite repressed. That in my childhood, I learned my safety mechanism, which was to not fully experience a lot of pain. So because I had my defense mechanism of not feeling a lot of the pain and the sadness, I ended up locking myself up from a lot of the good emotions too. And so I say this, having experienced it, you don't want to live life without any emotions. Emotions give a lot of color. They give a lot of richness to life. So it's important to feel them. But when you're in the emotional throes of something, know that it's just going to pass. It's the wave. Happiness is a wave, just like sadness is a wave. And if you think about it just moving through you, then we have this sense of non-attachment and acceptance because it is just an expression that's happening at the time. So we've talked about emotional regulation. We've talked about what it is and some neurological pieces of why we sometimes get so reactive and what part of the brain that's really hitting. And that ultimately, to live the most masterful life is being able to regulate those emotions in a healthy way, which means feeling them without getting lost in them. The long-term strategy is being able to find some spiritual practice that allows you to anchor, to root. And maybe the best metaphor for you is the tree. Maybe it's just thinking about the waves. Know that all emotions are temporary and to utilize them to gain more information about what is important to you, what you value, what you need to work on, what you need to let go of, and what you need to heal. I hope you found this helpful. Thank you so much for listening and for watching these videos. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. If you want any topic talked about, then write a caption or a comment underneath the description so I can share things that you really feel connected to or that you really want to learn about. I appreciate your time. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.